things that I think is really important for us to remember in this moment is our own history of resistance and our own history of responding to crisis in progressive ways. And one of the things that's so striking about this moment, when we look at everything that is being undone by these shock therapists, is that so much of it are progressive victories that were won in a very specific period in time in this country. I'll just give you a couple of examples. 1933, a law was passed called the Glass-Steagall Act, which made it illegal for a consumer bank to engage in speculative finance. If you were going to be a speculator, be a speculator. But if you're going to take citizens' money, people's money, and put it in the bank and be entrusted with that, no gambling for you. So there was a firewall, sort of church and state division. And that was passed in 1933. 1934, Social Security, what they'd like to privatize as soon as possible. Those public housing projects in New Orleans on such desirable pieces of real estate that they couldn't wait to close them down. As Richard Baker, the Republican congressman, said, we couldn't clean out the housing projects, but God did. He said that 10 days after Katrina. Those buildings were born out of the U.S. Housing Act of 1937. Fannie Mae, a public institution to get more low-income people into houses, 1938. So I think we know what was going on between 1933 and 1938. The Great Depression, a profound crisis in this country. These were the ideas that were lying around, okay? And that is what the right has understood and what the right has studied. Our tactics, okay? Now, what the right understands, okay, is that crises are volatile. They're dangerous. They're dangerous because, particularly in economic crisis, people are seeing the failures of the market system. And they're saying this system is too brutal. The other thing is that, if you're seeing this government act, intervene so aggressively, then it raises the question of why they can't intervene on behalf of people. Now, I want to just come back a little bit more to that history, because we often say, when FDR brought in the New Deal. Well, FDR didn't bring in the New Deal on his own. And he didn't bring in the New Deal because he was a nice guy and just wanted to. He brought in the New Deal because he was under tremendous pressure from the grassroots of this country, who were moving dramatically to the left and thought he was a complete sellout, who were organizing massive general strikes, shutting down entire cities, responding to waves of foreclosures with direct action, which meant that when their neighbors' furniture was moved out into the street, they moved it back inside. And that's what won these housing victories, and that's what won rent control. So it was an enormous mobilization. And what that meant was that you had a population, a mobilized population, that was a credible threat, that allowed FDR to say to Wall Street, who of course was pressuring him as they would pressure Obama, look, my hands are tied. Look at what the alternative is. If we don't bring in the New Deal, we'll have a revolution on our hands. And that was not a joke. That was a credible threat. Now, in terms of what this moment could bring, I just want to throw out a couple of things, and we're running short on time. But this moment is a volatile moment. It is a volatile moment, I think, in a good way, because the ideology is laid bare. The hypocrisy of the ideology is laid bare. So if taxpayers can bail out the investors of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, then it raises the question of why they can't intervene on behalf of the 2 million Americans who are facing foreclosure. I mean, if public money is going to save these companies, the least that can be demanded in return is a moratorium on evictions, on foreclosures. So this is a moment where these types of demands can be made. If you can bail out AIG for $85 million, why is single-payer health care such a wild dream in this country? firms taking lines of credit out from the Federal Reserve. And I'm not talking about the bailouts now. This is something we're barely hearing anything about because it's much less spectacular than the bailouts. But they're extending, the Federal Reserve has extended the conditions under which companies can go and get loans. A very good economist named Dean Baker in Washington wrote a piece a couple of days ago putting out this wild idea. He said, if we're giving out all these loans, we can attach whatever conditions we want to them. So any Wall Street firm that comes to the Federal Reserve and asks for a loan should be told that they can get it as long as they cap executive salary at $2 million. Why not? And if they don't like it, then they can just see how they survive in the free market, right?